Okay, we'll call today's meeting to order. It's the October 20th, 2024 meeting of the Climate Action and Resilience Committee. My name is Brian Mays. I'm the City Councilor for St. Vital Ward. I'll be chairing today's meeting. We'll start with the land and water acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. So we need a motion firstly, I think, to have Laura, who we see there on our screen, to have Laura attend virtually. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. We surely do not need a seconder for them.
No.
Do we know? Good. Okay. All right. All those in favor?
And sorry, who was that? Dawn.
Laura
Dawn.
Tyler.
Sorry. All right.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so welcome, Laura. That's approved. And then we need a motion, Madam Clerk, to approve minutes of the last meeting. All right, we can have someone move that. Joseph, all those in favor? It's carried. To mention, we're welcome, joined by our coordinator as well as Moira Gear, who is, I think, theoretically, this will be your last meeting of this group. And Leah Cowan, who's our city clerk assigned. As well as Becky is here from the climate change office as well. First delegations then.
Yes. So the first delegate is James Beddoe, Executive Director of the Manitoba Eco Network, to be heard with respect to Report 6. Yeah, you can have a seat and you have up to 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you for the land acknowledgement and opening us up in a good way. I am relatively recent, just at the end of August, I took over the executive directorship of the Manitoba Eco Network. Really excited for that. Excited to be speaking here today in support of item number 6. That's reporting tools and mechanisms to phase out natural gas use. I think it's a great first start. I would say I think it makes complete sense to get a study that looks at phasing out natural gas. I would just highlight, I mean, if Winnipeg wants to even hit its 2030 target of a 20% reduction by 2011, let alone its net zero target by 2050, it's probably going to be next to impossible without doing that with some natural gas phase out. So I think it's obviously logical. I will say, obviously, what we'd be looking for next would be action and implementation. I certainly recognize the report is a good first step, but obviously want to see it move to that next level. It's going to be necessary and required. I think, although obviously there are some other drawbacks to maybe points to look at, but I think there's a lot of opportunities, right? Like if we look at the idea of phasing off natural gas, I think it could open up opportunities. So some of them, just to throw out some ideas, and these are just ideas that I recognize would need to be studied further, but the new Manitoba Affordable Energy Plan highlights the needs for district heating, or at least it wants to study and expand it. Now, I know that I think they're most looking at where we might already be expanding out natural gas networks in rural communities. And certainly I don't have any objection to that, but I think we also need to get Winnipeg on the table. The reality of the population density of Winnipeg means that, a very logical place to have district heating systems would be the city of Winnipeg. And of course, it's probably worth acknowledging we did, in fact, historically have district heating system going back to over 100 years ago. I certainly acknowledge that, but just shows that possibility. And maybe this is too big, right? But, large district heating systems could also melt the snow on sidewalks as they do in Iceland, or unfortunately Montreal hasn't had a lot of success with its experiments, but you can think of how these can actually make our city more attractive. I think if Winnipeg can lead the way of a cold city, how to do it in a phase out, then I think that makes our city more attractive, makes more people want to come to Winnipeg. And, that even has positive benefits in terms of increased property values, which could mean increased revenue for the city of Winnipeg. Other things to highlight would be the need. We're already flaring methane at our landfills. That's a heat opportunity there that could literally be captured. And I think that's something that we should be looking at of how, I will say, first and foremost, the city needs to move forward with a composting program to deal with source reduction. But the reality is we are going to have what's in there now is going to produce methane for the next 20 or 30 years. And anything we continue to put in, the same is true. Also, I think it might be worth looking at the Prince Edward Island, the city of Summerside, implemented a thermal storage system where they were basically working with residents to in overnight rates and rates where electricity was lower. You'd obviously have to talk to Manitoba Hydro in the province, but actually implemented thermal heat systems that are basically a way of, when energy rates are low, of storing heat in ceramic bricks essentially inside a heater in the house and then blowing it out. So obviously the context in PEI is a little bit different, but they certainly have been done a lot on wind energy in recent years, and that's why they're looking at it. It's also worth noting the new affordable energy plan also highlights wind energy, so there could be some things for both the province and the city to learn out of that. Just a few other points to highlight. One thing the Manitoba Eco Network is actually actively participating in, it's yet to be seen, but in the rate applications before the pub, we're also concerned at trying to bring in economic experts to look at the reality that people already are choosing to phase out their natural gas systems in favor of, a geothermal ground source heat system or other systems. When that happens, it's going to change the customer base. It's going to change the economics of it, which may actually mean rates may have to go up substantially more. So we have to be looking at that. I think I don't intend to take the full 10 minutes, but for lack of a better pun, phasing out of natural gas is coming down the pipe. So it makes sense for this, for council to put forward a report and start studying it and start studying all of the broader implications of it. I mean, there's even broader implications I haven't addressed in terms of climate resiliency and social equity. And I don't know that I'm going to get into that in the short time that I have today, but I think I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with this report, and that would, and that's what we're hoping to see first the report. I mean, obviously you can't move forward without a plan, and then following the plan, looking at implementation. And I think we could look at this as an opportunity to put our city more on the map than it already is. That concludes my remarks, subject to any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I should note the report, the request for a report would go on. It is rather odd. I still think that it would go to water and waste instead of to planning and property, because most of the issues there are planning and property. But the idea is that it would go to, if passed today, will appear on the agenda at some point in a month or two at water and waste. So similar delegation would be appreciated there.
Oh, okay. I also thought there might be a need for, thank you for your question, a similar delegation in November, if and when it gets to the council as a whole, I presume as well. So thanks for that.
I do have one question.
Sure.
So there was an article in the Free Press regarding this sort of issue, where it brought this issue to the fore. And one of the things they noted was a comment from Manitoba Hydro that, we're going to need a lot more electrical energy to deal with this. That I assume that was assuming on the part of Hydro that this would all go to electric heat as opposed to things like heat pumps. I'm wondering if has anything been done economically speaking, or in a financial analysis to say, here's what it costs to run a ground source heat pump system, and here's what it currently costs to run a gas furnace, because they need an electric fan and distribution. If you know of that, it'd be very interesting.
So I don't have it right there. I know the climate action team has done studies basically finding that for most homeowners, a switch to a geothermal system would save them about $700 a year. So there's already savings there. Obviously, the challenge of that is the upfront costs. One of the ways in which could be looked at is attaching those capital costs to the property itself. Obviously, you're going to need some interjurisdictional work for that, I acknowledge. But if you're able to attach it that way, similar to we do with programs for natural gas furnaces, that might be one way of expanding it. I know the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, the International Institute for Sustainable Development, member organization of our organization, I should say. I guess I'm not being obvious on that, but they put out building better. It deals with the need for deep energy retrofits and how you would finance that. Also, I guess one thing I forgot to also manage is, you're saying that you may need a lot more electricity. I mean, I think there's ways in which conservation we looked at. Certainly, we have to look at our demand management. Although when I recently did attend ministers, and I see some of the community members that were there, they highlighted that they felt with the wind developments that actually would deal with most of the immediate energy constraints for the next decade or so, and also highlighted overall economically, I can't remember the hundreds of millions that Minister Sala listed that would be saved in terms of not bringing natural gas into the province. And then one last thing is you could look at, say, like the University of Winnipeg, which has used biomass. So they're using wood pellets as part of their net zero emissions and replacing their natural gas. So I didn't also highlight biomass opportunities. I mean, there's many opportunities, and that's where I think it's very wise and where I think I'm here to speak in support of this motion to get this study done, to get this report done and start looking at all of those, because there's going to be a need to get, as you said, some of those technical numbers. And then I guess a last shameless plug, should you wish to give the Manitoba Eco Network any resources to help fund or do that study, we would certainly be open to exploring that. Apologies for the shameless plug, but it's my job now.
I have a comment. As a complex scenario that would suppose to this transition, I would like to know if you agree about how the efficiency of our buildings could impact in this transition.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you for that question. Without a doubt, adding to the efficiency of our buildings means that we may have less need for the energy to come in. I mean, I think of sort of the passive house standard where you could literally heat a home even in Winnipeg with a hairdryer, right? Is kind of the model or the example to put it conceptually for people. So obviously, I think it's generally recognized that conservation first is how you almost always have to approach these problems. That's almost always your lowest hanging fruit, to use the analogy. And so I think you're right that conservation initiatives certainly have to be part of that. And I think that also goes to my point about how it makes us a more attractive city, but it also, I would say, would have a benefit for the city in terms of revenue, that better insulated houses, I know the market doesn't fully appreciate the value for it yet. Hopefully it will as time goes on. That also means, at least the way that we presently do our tax base, that increases the tax base of the city of Winnipeg as they do that work. And, looking at sort of property tax assessed financing is perhaps, if you're saving $700 a year, there may be ways of financing that in so that the impact, like the economic impacts in terms of the capital costs and whatnot, are actually flowed through in the most economically efficient way.
All right. There are no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and our next delegate is Adrian Warner to be heard with respect to report 6.
Hello there, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. It's nice to have the sun out. My name is Adrian Warner. I'm here today as a citizen talking about my support to item number 6, reporting tools and mechanisms to phase out natural gas use in planned buildings. And of course, this is a crucial step for Winnipeg. The motion itself is very thorough, I believe, in outlining some of the reasons for doing this. Cities nationally and internationally have already started doing this. It's cutting edge, but it is something that we already are able to look at other jurisdictions to understand what they are doing. It's been outlined as a priority in the Community Energy Investment Roadmap. And investing in new heating and buildings will save consumers money when they have to retrofit a new home as the regulatory environment begins to shift towards renewable energy. This is even more important because, as we know, the government of Manitoba has recently signaled a similar shift away from non-renewable heating sources. So we are really following the wind. But I also want to really reiterate, and I think it's important to do this in any type of conversation like this, that burning fossil fuels and things like natural gas cause climate change. It's surprising that human-caused impacts remain something that the public are unsure about. And so I tried to take opportunities like this just to put it on the record that burning fossil fuels creates climate change. And so initiatives like this are fundamental to changing the city's impact on our climate. However, in a world of competing priorities, I also want to emphasize that there are other reasons that this initiative is valuable. We see across the country that health is a national priority at every level of government, and natural gas is harmful to our health. and it can put our lives in danger. You don't have to look further than the headlines in Winnipeg to see that the city has had to call, or that there's had to be emergency crews called on January 3rd, May 18th, June 12th, June 13th, and those are only the ones that I could find in a quick Google search. I'm sure there's more. Natural gas leads to asthma if it's in things such as the way we cook our food, just as an example. And so those leaks are rare, but they're dangerous. This is not the case with electrical heating. Switch to electric improves our air quality as well, and in general, keeps our people safe. I also want to speak to a personal motivation because I think that's important as a citizen. As a parent with a young child, a changing climate will profoundly impact the future of my 1-year-old. Investing in a thriving city for the next generation who wants to live, work, and grow up, perhaps raise a family, and retire in this city, indicating to them and to other young people that this is a city that takes the future seriously is important. And so today, by having this discussion, we are leaving a legacy for the families of the future and for our city. And so instead of talking about a phase out of natural gas, which looks backwards to the choices that made sense 100 years ago, I'm proud to talk about phasing in electrical heating. Let's look at the future. Heating retrofits will create jobs. It'll signal to people that we have a future, that Winnipeg is innovative and responsive and is a place that we want to live because we're responding to the problems today while also thinking about our future tomorrow. Still, I recognize that this is a very complex decision, and as much as I want urgent action, we have to be cautious. There are, of course, many stakeholders, the city, industry, Manitoba Hydro, development, the provincial and federal governments, just to name the few that come to the top of my head. And so in this context, I want to applaud this committee for asking for the research and getting a clearer picture of what the city can do to make this important difference as we move forward. So let's act soon, but first let's get this right. And that's all I have to say, supporting this idea and this initiative. Thank you again.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Ward? If not, all right, thank you for coming down.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
We'll come to that fairly soon, the item 6. But no further delegations, we should move on to reports then. Item number 1 is schedule for quarterly meetings. Nothing much more to be said about that, I assume, Madam Clerk. Pretty straightforward. We need a motion on this.
Yes, I'm over to the dates.
All right. Gear moves approval of that. All those in favor? So indicate. Thank you. That is passed. Item number 2. I should have a longer report than last time, which isn't hard. Not that it's any more, it's marginally more positive than last time. 3 things I want to talk about. At council last week, to the credit of Laura, I had Kurt Hull and some others that came to speak. They came to speak to a motion that we had tabled a month earlier, a notice of motion, and then the motion was considered at the council meeting last week. The motion was to simply a budget referral, to refer to the budget process, which we do quite often. A motion about the retrofits report that we had asked for last year. We'd asked the staff to sort of give us in the most cost-effective manner possible up to $80 million in retrofit projects. There was a report prepared a year ago that had roughly 50 odd million. There were certainly problems with it. Eldon Ross Pool was included for something several $1 million, which would only have saved 5 tons of emissions per year. The work wasn't energy retrofits. It was just like fixing up an old pool, and the staff recommended closing the pool. And then a different report a month later, the pool is to be closed. So regardless of that, the motion simply to refer it for consideration in the budget was defeated. So the status then is that report a year ago led to a request to staff to come back with a building emissions strategy. Staff were given a year. Staff have now requested another 6 months. the committee took a month to consider the request for 6 months and then granted the extension for 6 months. So 19 months after the original request, hopefully there will be some sort of building emissions reduction strategy. How that will differ from the pre-existing community energy investment roadmap, I'm not entirely sure. How that will differ from the report. I mean, I was told, well, this one, they're going to be strategic. And I said, well, the last one we said, do it in the most cost-effective manner possible, including a look at asset revitalization. I guess we'll see what comes forward in 6 months' time. Certainly, the first 3 cycles of the budget for this council will have been missed. At best, that report, at best, if it comes forward in roughly April, will be in time for the final, 4th and final budget rotation of this council. There were 2 items in the strategic plan for this council that was derived quite early on, 1 or 2 months after the mayor was elected, but 2 months really, January. We had a retreat and came back with that. There were 2 items on there. 4.6 was to look at geothermal and solar and talk to other levels of government. The action item on that is the study that's now been delayed another 6 months. So nothing actually of action on that. And the next item, which was create a green utility, is listed as requires initiation. So that is the level of activity to date, I guess, on those 2 items under the strategic plan in terms of getting some movement on building retrofits. But thanks to Laura for at least trying and coming down there. And there were a number of councillors, including Councillor Gilroy, I believe, who supported the motion. I think Councillor Allard, who has been, to his credit, very consistently supportive on the environment, didn't support that, feeling it had already been dealt with this referral back to the committee for another 6 months to study, to come forward with what is supposed to be an emissions reduction strategy. Again, how that will differ from the 2022 report remains to be seen. So, second item is the motion you see in front of you today, number 6. Will be an interesting test case. Should that pass, I assume it will today. It's to go to Water and Waste. Media coverage last week, the chair of Water and Waste indicated he thought the utility should be laser focused on the North End plant, and one can defend those remarks. I don't want to criticize him. It does, however, force the question, and I mentioned this at council, is the Office of Sustainability in the right place if it's with the utility? It originally was under the CAO. It was moved over to report to the Water and Waste Utility a few budgets ago, probably 4 budgets ago. There have been people who've been trying to move it back. Some of the people in this room, I think, have appeared at council suggesting that. It does create an impossibility then if the Water and Waste Utility is to be laser focused on the North End plant, what's everybody else doing in there that's in the Office of Sustainability? And how are they going to be doing a building emissions reduction strategy if they're laser focused? You can see the dilemma here, right? As long as we've got the Office of Sustainability in the Water and Waste Utility, and the Water and Waste Utility is only supposed to be looking at water and waste issues, I'm not too sure how that could work, frankly, and that's a debate. And I guess we'll see what happens at the next Water and Waste Committee if the motion is simply dismissed or referred back. I guess that'll send quite a message. But I think it's a debate that we need to have because it renders even more questionable what we're doing here, frankly. If the committee that we're reporting to then says, no, we're only doing water and waste issues, then I don't really know what vehicle, what purpose is being served, but hopefully we'll have that debate and maybe we can move the Office of Sustainability back under the CAO, and that would at least deal with that. I don't mean that to be a criticism of Councillor Duncan. He has his views, and God knows the North End plant is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and many years in the making. So I can appreciate that's his focus. But what are we to do with everything else that is related to sustainability issues? Final optimistic note: I do get a budget from city clerks of a few $1,000s. As chair of this committee, normally this is used for conferences and travel and stuff, I decided to give $1,000 last week to, it's kind of a subset of the Green Action Center. It's the Youth Climate Corps. A young woman named Bianca Seam had approached me, and I know they had an event at the legislature trying to promote this idea of a Youth Climate Corps, something which I actually think is a great idea. And there are precedents in other jurisdictions. There's the whole City Year program in the US. David Cameron, as Prime Minister of Britain, had a whole Youth Corps idea. This is the next step in that. I think it would be a great thing to push for. It's only $1,000, but if they're students and others trying to do this off the corner of their desk, so to speak, to promote this idea of a Youth Climate Corps. So those are pleased to give them some of the money I have allocated from the chair budget. So that's, I think an update on what's been going on at City Hall, at least from my perspective as the chair. So any questions on that? If not, we'll move on to, sure.
That's the point, Councillor. When I was with AECOM, we did a study that looked for water and waste that was part of the 2020 plan for the city of Winnipeg. There was a sub-study. It was for water and waste, and it was for sustainability related to water and waste, but other areas too. And so it's I don't think it's wrong that water and waste would be handling some of this, partly because a lot of the adaptation issues relate to water and aging infrastructure potentially, and a few other things. So there's a bundle that would be water and waste related within the purview, I guess, of the committee that we have. And then there's things that aren't. So I'm just saying that at least it's a start to have a group that would be interested in some of the issues that we have to deal with.
Sure, and I mean, there's always, to date, there's certainly been Councillor Rowlands, I think, felt, but why is this green utility idea supposed to come out of the Water and Waste and Environment Committee when a lot of it's to do with municipal accommodations and retrofits. In the end, it was resolved because nothing happened. So there was no great jurisdictional fight when nothing's going on and there are no mud dollars in play. It was a pretty notional jurisdictional fight. So yeah, I mean, I take your point, but if the water and waste utility is being directed to do things that if there's no ability or no desire to have the Office of Sustainability influencing or doing things, I think council needs to be clear on that. Okay, so who was here for her? All right, thank you to the clerk. Maybe Darcy can move to receive my report as information then. All right, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. That's passed. Over to you, Moira.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, okay, so update from the public service at today's meeting in terms of our climate action plan. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago. City announced 15 drop-off locations for food waste in partnership with Compost Winnipeg. Happy to say one of them is down my back lane at Sir John Franklin. So used it a couple of times already. So that's progress. There is a senior management team climate steering committee, which I chair, which has members of it has representation directors from the various departments. So we meet regularly. So the committee recently approved the project charter and plan for updating the city's climate action plan. So that was recently done. And we have three interdepartmental teams that will support the work of the climate office and some of the operational things we'd like to review in terms of energy planning, electric vehicle charging, and associated environmental benefits. So there's some work going on there. I have permission from Lisa that the city recently endorsed and provided a letter of support to Health Canada for the province for WRHA to access some funding under the Health Adapt program, which helps look at building climate resilient and low carbon health systems. So with the view that a letter of support from the city would greatly help the application, and it really will complement the work that we will do with the Climate Action Plan. So lots of good partnership that can happen on that front. And just, I'd like to thank the committee members. This is the first year of the committee, and thank you for all your efforts. And you can see like incrementally, there's more that comes each time as everybody settles into their new roles. So we really appreciate the work that you've done and the ideas that you're bringing forward. And I'd also like to announce, like, this will be my last meeting as Chairperson Mays indicated. I'm not leaving the committee because I don't like it. I'm leaving the committee because I'm retiring from the city. So it's been a real pleasure to work with you all, and appreciate your input. And that's my update.
All right. Any questions arising out of that? If not, maybe Laura, you can move to receive that report as information. Thank you, Laura. All those in favor? So indicate thank you, and thanks to Maura, who has been perfect to work with over the years on a number of files, water and waste related mostly, where that's where we did the most work when Maura was still director there. So thanks to her. Thank you. And over to our coordinator for report on item number 4.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'll share a few highlights from my written report and then ask park members to share their experiences and reflections on some of those activities. And then since this is our last meeting of 2024, I'd also like to share a few of the achievements that we've made over the last year. So thank you to the sub-working group for defining the scope of research for the jurisdictional scan to align actions with climate targets and recommending a consultant to complete the work. We are not able to announce who the successful candidate is yet, as internal approvals processes on Parks recommendation are still underway. So this is the first consultant hiring process we've undertaken as a committee. And so the process took a little bit longer than we expected. And later on in the agenda, there will be a request for an extension of time for the consultant to complete the research for early in 2025. Planning for the update of the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan continues with approval of the project charter, like the Vice Chairperson shared. And discussions have been initiated with CARC on their role as the external stakeholder advisory mechanism for the project team. And through our terms of reference, there are a few different ways that community and stakeholders can participate. And so CARC can form subcommittees, working groups, and action teams, which can be used to inform, provide advice, and bring additional perspectives to the work of the members. So those are good opportunities to increase participation in the future. CARC has proposed 2 new motions today, and if approved, the approvals pathway for item 6, we mentioned it, phasing out natural gas is Standing Policy Committee, Water, Waste and Environment, and no CARC budget is required. But the motion asks the public service to identify which tools and mechanisms this is available to phase out the use of natural gas in existing buildings, and those being planned for in greenfield and infill development. And the motion requests a report back in 180 days for 6 months. So that would land it close to the April CARC meeting that has just been approved, or the schedule has just been approved. Item 7 will require Standing Policy Committee Water Waste, EPC and Council approval in its approval pathway. And CARC is proposing spending up to $12,000 of its non-professional services budget from 2024 to hire a consultant to conduct public opinion research on climate change perspectives and action. So, Don, would you care to share?
Well, regarding the researching methods to align actions with climate targets, I think we probably all agree that climate change is an existential issue, and so that issues related to municipal GHG reduction and mitigation and climate adaptation need to be effectively understood and communicated to citizens of Winnipeg. So our request for proposal was for a consultant to conduct an interjurisdictional research scan, which we asked the proponents to look at how other primarily Canadian cities had aligned their local climate actions with municipal targets, climate targets, and to provide recommendations on promising tools and mechanisms that mainstream equitable action, climate action into government planning and decision-making in order to achieve the climate targets, and strengthen communication, transparency, and accountability between the city of Winnipeg and its residents. So about the actual process, I'm confident that our consultant review process identified an excellent candidate, which, as Laura has mentioned, we can't reveal at this point. The committee's recommended consultant, though, is locally based, has an excellent understanding of regional and the broader context, regional issues, broader context. And climate change has been the focus of their work, and their team is well connected, reputable, and understand both the idea of mainstreaming climate action and communicating actions and results to the general public or interest groups.
Thank you.
Yeah, on regards the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan update process. I'm feeling optimistic about how the Winnipeg Climate Action Update process will unfold, and I'm eagerly await more information and discussion on how CARC will advise the project team throughout the update process. At the same time, we have some concerns, or I feel some concerns, where because we anticipate that the length of the plan update process, it's 18-24 months. And we think that there is a lot of urgency, and if it's something that could be done in a short time, that could be really appreciated. Very well. As I said, very optimistic and expecting that we can be part of this process.
Sorry, just for clarity, the what's taking 18 to 24 months, not the study, but the
climate, in my written report, we mentioned that the climate action plan update process and the development of the resilience strategy would take between 18 months to 2 years to complete.
From now?
We're anticipating an RFP going out later this year. And then once we have the consultant in place, then that work can continue.
That's not before us though, right? That's
No.
Separate. Okay.
More of a process update.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
And then if I can continue with a bit of a yearly overview, just to remind folks of all the good work that the committee has been doing. And CARC's annual work plan requires an annual report of our activities at the first meeting of 2025, where a more thorough review will be provided. But for now, I'd like to share that CARC has come a long way in its first year, and I'm very grateful for the members' determination, professionalism, and commitment in creating a very constructive foundation to work together on climate action. So some of the main areas of achievement include building relationships and establishing internal processes to work together, understanding CARC's roles and responsibilities, and how ad hoc committees at the city function. monitoring and learning about other city committees and decision-making processes like the budget process and annual reporting on the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan. The committee has begun to understand community needs for more communication, accountability, and transparency in the work currently being done by the city and the work being proposed. The committee is building consensus on shared priorities that resulted in 3 motions and exploration of many others. CARC members actively participated in all meetings and material review beyond the 5 to 6 hours that the terms of reference identify is part of their role. We held 4 quarterly public meetings, 8 working group meetings, and an orientation session. And we still have 2 months of collaborative work to go. So I look forward to supporting CARC's work and building on this momentum that has been established this year to begin strategic planning for 2025. And I'd like to thank you all for your work to date. And I'd also like to thank the Winnipeggers who applied to volunteer on CARC for 2025 through the boards and commissions process that recently closed. There's a lot of great professional and community work already happening on climate change action. So it's exciting to learn about. Okay, and then if some committee members would like to share any reflections on your experience on the committee thus far.
For sure, yeah. I'd like to say that it's great that we've had lots of patience because we are a first-time committee, and so kind of getting everything together and getting our feet on the ground running, it has taken a little bit of time, but I'm also happy with the first year with what we've gotten forward so far. There's also been some different nuances for us to understand, as some of us have come from committee backgrounds, board backgrounds, or not much of a background either. And so there are those nuances between the ad hoc committees and other committees, like with organizations, as opposed to working with the city. And so understanding those differences the last year has been really key for our committee. I would also say that a lot of the time that has been taken up during our conversations are I don't even want to say that they're debates. They're very healthy conversations that we have that represent each of our different backgrounds and sectors that we come from. And so it has been wonderful conversations to discuss all these different topics for CARC. And yeah, the motions have been very important to initiate, to just kind of start these public conversations and to talk about action for climate change in the city.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, I'll just add that I look forward to advising the project team on incorporating health lens into the updated climate action plan, and also advising on engagement strategies to ensure participation by groups we may not hear from without targeted initiatives such as Indigenous peoples and youth.
Okay.
I think that
That's it?
concludes
Okay.
my report, unless anyone else has comments.
Okay, if we can have a motion then to, thank you. So moves, so all those in favor? Thank you, so that's received as information. So on to item number 5, researching methods to align actions with climate targets. This is the extension of time.
Yes.
I don't know who. Where do you want to?
Oh,
Take that.
Doesn't matter to me. I'd like to move the motion to request an extension of time to report back on this research at the first meeting of CARC on January 22nd, 2025.
Any discussion? If not, yes, favor of the extension of time. All right, that passes. Thank you. On item number 6, I just had a question for the clerk. If this passes, and I'm sure it will today, it would go forward to water and waste. People here could appear in delegation, presumably at water and waste, if they wanted to speak to it.
We typically, ad hoc committee members don't appear in delegation at committee. but we can't prevent anyone from registering as a citizen. It's a bit of a gray area. There's nothing to prevent it, but our suggestion would be that
The gray area was, okay, fair enough. Yeah, because this will probably make the December meeting.
I believe so.
Water and Waste,
Water and Waste's agenda for November 1st has been published already.
correct?
So their next meeting is on November 22nd, which is their technical December meeting.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good, okay, so on to item number 6, where we had a couple of delegations, thank you. The speakers on that, and so anyone is. Or,
Laura Tyler,
Laura Tyler.
will be
Yeah.
introducing this for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm really happy that you guys let me zoom in. I want to thank all of the delegations for coming today. It was really valuable and like empowering to hear a lot of the comments that you're making, which is very much in line with the conversations we've been having as a committee. So I think the motion kind of speaks for itself as to like why it's so important. We know we need to act, and you can see that in the language of the motion. We already know that we've done a lot of, or the city has made a lot of decisions, has accepted a lot of reports, like the Community Energy Investment Roadmap, that essentially says that this is a necessary thing to do. And so in some ways, this feels like a formality, but in other ways, it feels like it's a critical step forward. Just last week, we saw council discussing building retrofits and budget allocations, and a lot of the people who were against moving forward on that really wanted to see a little bit more of the numbers, about the reports, about the like pathways. And so if that's what they need in order to make these decisions, then let's make sure that they have that information. And so this report will do that for us. I do think it's really important that we not kick this down the road and that we pass it now, and hopefully Water and Waste will see the same, because we will not hit the targets that the city has set out for itself unless we start to take these types of actions. I personally work on building codes, and this feels very similar in a lot of ways. Building codes are there to make sure we don't go below a certain threshold, and it feels like that's what's kind of hopefully going to come out of this, that we'll find the threshold that we can't go below in terms of adding natural gas and also and keeping natural gas going. Realtors are starting to see that the market is asking for more energy efficient buildings, that they are favoring properties that are choosing alternatives to natural gas. And so I think that we can't ignore the huge consumer protection issue that is associated with the continuing of natural gas. Like, people can't choose a building that's already built. So let's make sure that when that building is built, that it's built to the best possible way, so that they're not responsible for aging infrastructure that's expensive to maintain and then eventually replaced, because we know that it's going to be replaced at some point in probably our lifetime, if we are listening to the science. I think it's also important that we recognize that we want Winnipeg to be a place where people want to move to. And I know that if I was looking at moving my business someplace, I would be looking at the costs associated with that. Natural gas is a volatile market. It's got factors that are outside of our control. And while our electrical grid here in Manitoba is not perfect, it has much more stability in terms of economics and the ability to kind of forecast out. There's also the fact that when should we have the droughts that some people are really worried about and our electrical grid become a little bit more less stable, the fact that we already are on electricity means that's a lot easier to replace with wind, solar, or other options. And so I think that's really important that we recognize that in terms of resilience and emergency planning for the city, that we have energy sources that we can supplement. I don't want to have our natural gas grid go out at a -40 a day. That's really scary to me. Because where is that backfill going to come from if we don't have a strong alternative in terms of electricity there? So I also really liked the point that the delegate made about the health of the buildings. Manitoba Hydro, just down the street from where you guys are right now, or around the corner and down the street, I guess I should say, on Portage, we have one of the world's most efficient buildings, and it's not using natural gas. And they've seen an increase of productivity because we're seeing less absenteeism and other health-related factors. So it's really important that we recognize that there's a multitude of reasons. It's not just because of climate change. It's not just because of money. It's not just because of health. It's because of all of these factors that this motion is just so important. So I'm really excited to see it. I thank Councillor Mays and Councillor Schreier for years ago making some headway in this direction. I thank all of council for adopting the SEER report. And I'm really excited that hopefully this will pass today. And this is the exciting motion about natural gas that we have here today.
Thank you. Thanks for your work on this, and yeah, we're going to keep trying. And thanks to the delegates. The point about flaring at Brady landfill is well articulated, and the city is still, as it has for a couple of years, been trying to get to the starting line to get some work done that goes beyond the flaring, but hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have something to announce out there, because it has been several years of studies, talks, reports. So hopefully somebody can get that going and take some credit for that. Any further discussion of the motion? Okay, so I guess Laura, you're moving the motion then? Very good, thank you. If there's no discussion, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is passed unanimously. So that goes up to, we anticipate November 22, Water and Waste. We don't know who'll be on that committee at this stage because council chooses the lineup roughly November 6th to November 8th, somewhere in there, 6th, I think, yeah. Okay. Okay, on to item number 7. This is another new motion, right? Okay, so Laura, do you want to speak to this?
Actually, Joseph will be getting us going on. I speak too much.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, this motion, the public opinion research on Winnipeg climate change action. Yeah, this year a lot of CARC's first year work and learning was about what the city is doing on climate action. One thing that has come up repeatedly in CAR discussions is the need to strengthen communications and involvement between the city and the residents. Not only that, besides that, CAR's mandate, as Laura mentioned before, and our terms of reference include promoting the communication between us, the citizens, and our community and the city. No, we really believe that if we can better understand how Winnipeggers view climate change, the level of awareness of cities' efforts on climate change, and what climate actions and tools are supported. We believe that to know this public opinion can be one of the best tools that we can have to advise council on climate change issues. That's why we are the community. We are the citizens, the members of this committee. We represent different lenses of the city, and we think that if we as a committee can promote this tool, I believe that it can be trustful. It could be very effective, and honestly, for us, very useful to know what the city is asking. No, when I see the city, I mean who built the city, the communities. No, that's why I'm going to read what is the motion. That's why CARC recommends the Standing Policy Committee on Water, Waste and Environment the following: that Climate Action and Resilience Committee engage a public opinion research consultant to survey Winnipeggers for their views on climate change, including but not limited to levels of awareness of City of Winnipeg climate change efforts and climate action priorities. The cost of for the research consultant be funded through the Climate Action and Resilience Committee 2024 budget for non-professional services. And I want to say that I believe that that's not unidirectional research. I think that it should be bidirectional, because then we will be able to, knowing what the city, what the citizens want to know, it will be easier for us in the city to bring back what they can get, no? Yep, that's it for me. I don't know if someone, maybe there's.
Yeah, I would agree. Just having some kind of baseline metric to really help the committee and the future committee going forward and the city to know this, I think would be really helpful going forward. So thank you.
And budget, it's committee budget already, but it still requires water and waste approval. Is it-
Engaging the public in this way. Yes.
Would, okay, fair enough. Good, but other budgetary expenses would not require, wouldn't necessarily require.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Depends.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. No, thank you everybody for your work on this. This is a good, again, a baseline established is good work. Thank you for that. Any further discussion on this one? If not, Joseph can move that. That would be appreciated. Okay, all those in favor? And again, this one we're not opposed, so that's carried unanimously. This too should then appear in November 22 water and waste. Well, maybe I'll be on the committee. We'll see. All right. Any further items? Well, we're 14 times longer than our last meeting, so that is. Well, all right. So we're Bureau moves adjournment. All those in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.